Welcome to Last Call, Season 3, right here on UINDY TV. Graham Scher, Caden Colford, and Chuck Foster will have several guests on today, and it's a brand new season. Nathaniel Finch is gone, Caden, and he's graduated. He's out, and I have taken his place, but Caden's still here. You might have seen me in Chuck's position a lot last season, given my analysis, but now I'm in the anchor on the anchor desk.
Ready to go. Ready to go.
Well, let's get right into it. We have a lot to get to today. So this evening we have Colts to start with, but then we'll also talk everything in the NFL Week 1 after the season got started yesterday. College football, IndyCar wrapped up, and a brand new segment that you won't want to miss towards the end of the show. Let's get started with some Colts highlights. Impressions of him this far?
I'm excited for him because I think that this kind of changes up the entire way that the Colts play their offense. For the past few years, this team has been pocket quarterback, and now they have someone that can do it all. And I think it's going to be really entertaining to see, with his ceiling being so high, he has a chance to be a franchise quarterback for years to come.
You see Calvin Ridley there catching that touchdown. He had an unbelievable game yesterday, and Caden, he came back from an injury in which he hasn't played for over a year, but he looked lightning quick yesterday.
You know, as a fantasy owner of both T-Law and Calvin Ridley, I went home a happy man. It's good to see Calvin Ridley come back after his mishap in the league, and he went on a tear, especially in that first quarter. I mean, there was almost a whole drive of just Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley.
This catch was unbelievable. You mentioned Trevor Lawrence, though, the Prince. He's on my fantasy team as well, and he played outstanding yesterday. 241 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns. You saw the interception just a moment ago. There's one of his 2 touchdown passes. He was unbelievable, Chuck.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm happy to see this team finally starting to look well. The Jags have been a franchise that have been plagued by just unluckiness and injuries. Having Ridley, Kirk, and all these new receivers, and Ingram as well, I think that this offense is one of the most potent in the entire league and has potential to win this division for sure.
This was such a weird play, I thought. DeForest Buckner knocked the ball out, but the play was not blown dead, and DeForest Buckner picks it up and takes it to the house.
That's great awareness by the guy. You had everybody just standing around. Announcers didn't even know what was happening, but Here comes the guy who made this act, had to get up, go all the way, get the ball, and then presence of mind to get the ball across the goal line just to top it off.
The Colts were actually ahead for a lot of this game, it seemed like, but yeah, once the fourth quarter rolled around, crunch time set in, and the Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence had a couple of great drives, and then you see a costly error by Anthony Richardson. One of the few moments where he looked like a rookie yesterday, throwing that tough interception, just didn't get enough air under the ball. He had some good moments though, Chuck. A lightning quick pass to Josh Downs, which ended up leading to a nice score, and then you saw one a little bit earlier in the highlight reel to Michael Pittman, which a lot of the work was done by Pittman, but another fantastic throw. Anthony Richardson looked pretty good yesterday. One of the areas he wasn't so sharp in was this play right here. Late in the game, took a hard hit, and I think you have an injury update for us.
So Colts fans can breathe easy. It's just a bruised knee. He will be starting for week 2. I think that's just kind of what comes with being a scrambling quarterback. Those bumps and bruises are going to happen. He's going to learn to stop taking those as much and start sliding a little bit more and just bracing himself better. But it happens.
I think it's better to learn that lesson now, right? Week 1 in your first NFL season, this guy needs to learn how to slide. You've seen all the comparisons, him to Cam Newton, right? And that's a great comparison for a whole 3 years if he stays healthy that long. If he keeps running like he did this game, he's going to get hit upside the head once or twice too many, and then that might be all she wrote for Anthony Richardson. But if he learns how to get out of bounds, something that Justin Fields does very well, he can be very dangerous for a long time.
Absolutely.
Shane Steichen, first-year head coach with the Colts now, coming over. He was an offensive coordinator with the Super Bowl losing Eagles last year, Philadelphia, and he drew up a lot of designed runs for Anthony Richardson yesterday. Now that the debut of the rookie Richardson's in the books, what were your guys' first thoughts of him in the NFL?
Personally, for me, I felt like out of the 3 rookies that we saw yesterday, I think that he was the most seasoned-looking rookie out there. He played the best, arguably, and the way that he rushed was very good. He just needs, like I said, to be a little bit safer, but I think that that just comes with experience.
I think this is the perfect learning experience for Anthony Richardson, almost perfect placement. Nobody's expecting the Colts to go win the Super Bowl this year, right, or even make the playoffs. So I think the reason we didn't see him a whole lot in the preseason is because this entire season is something like a preseason Anthony Richardson. I mean, this guy has talent. He had glimpses of it. We got glimpses of it. He has the arm, for sure. This guy has arm talent. His placements, not all there, but you can definitely teach that as a coach, and I'm excited to see what he can do.
Colts looked pretty good yesterday. They ended up losing that game. You saw 31-21 the final score there. But the defense of Indianapolis actually looked pretty good as well. Shaq Leonard has been out for a while with a pretty awful injury, but he was back yesterday. And Zaire Franklin, another outside linebacker, he led the team in tackles. Those two, that tandem there, as well as DeForest Buckner, the three of them, I feel like really held the Colts in the game. Their defense did the work.
Absolutely. I feel like the Colts, they're kind of built identity on having one of the best defensive or at least rushing defenses. They have a phenomenal D-line. And we saw that last game. They did really good at keeping Etienne kind of contained. DeForest Buckner, of course, with the fumble touchdown. And I just really like the way that they always are on the quarterback at all times. I think that that's going to be the one thing they can really build around on their defense.
I think they stick with that too. That pressure, that can bid well. You can kind of get bit in the foot by that at times. But I mean, if you can keep that run game limited like they did with Etienne for the most part and keep pressure on the quarterback, that bids well for most any defense in the league.
Absolutely.
Colts lose, and they will be in Houston this week to play the Houston Texans, another divisional opponent. Let's move on to Chicago Bears. Up in Chi-Town, the Windy City, they also didn't look quite as good yesterday. I thought that they were going to come out and really make this a nice matchup. They have not beaten the Packers in years, but Jordan Love, he looked outstanding.
Absolutely. I mean, Jordan Love, and I think it showed that he has been behind Aaron Rodgers for a few years now, because even for someone that has played so little starting snaps in the NFL, he looked extremely, he looked like a veteran out there. He was making the plays he needed to make. He found his receivers. Now, he didn't have a lot of throwing yards, but when it came down to it, he was able to make the plays that were needed.
The Packers really utilized Aaron Jones yesterday. You've seen him a couple times already in this highlight reel, just getting out of the backfield and catching some passes from Love and just has room to run. The Bears defense was really nowhere to be seen yesterday. It gave up 38 points.
But here's Jordan Love again, and this is where I start to see some Aaron Rodgers off the back foot, almost looked like a fadeaway. Probably not the best showcase of balance that time, but he's making throws like this. I think you know the man he got this from, right? And then Romeo Doubs, a game for him, 2 touchdowns, a really great showing for the second-year guy.
I don't think he was out there looking like a superstar, like the next coming of the franchise quarterback yet, but I think it's just nice for the Packers to know that they still have consistency at that position.
Guys, in your opinion, what went wrong for the Bears this year, and how do they build off of this to try and move forward in the season?
Defense. I've been saying it since the start of this year. If you ever have a fantasy running back going against the Chicago Bears, play them. They have one of the worst rushing defenses in the entire league. And it's just, it showed. Even whenever Aaron Jones was not running, they just kept on losing him. And both of his receptions were massive games. And that cannot happen.
And you got to think for the majority of Justin Fields' career, he's been playing from behind. I think any competitor would tell you it's a whole lot easier to play with the lead than it is to play coming from behind. So I think if you give Justin Fields a little bit of, in the MLB they call it run support, right? But if you give him something to work with, have a lead for once, get to use his weapons with some pressure off his shoulders. We haven't really been able to see him work too loosely, but when he does, he's an excellent quarterback with a whole lot of talent. So I think if that defense shapens up, the offense can in a hurry too.
Absolutely.
Let's rewind a few days to Thursday night when the NFL season got started. In Kansas City, the defending Super Bowl champions in Arrowhead, they took on the Detroit Lions. Let's take a look at the highlights now. And the Lions, they looked impressive. But the Chiefs, I think, is the big story here because coming off of their Super Bowl championship, they just looked out of sorts. I know there was some injury problems with them, but the Lions, I feel like they just demolished them.
It surprised me, and I think the thing that hurt the most watching the Chiefs was just they didn't have the offensive identity that we're used to. Yeah. I mean, what was it? Like he threw 7 receptions to 7 different receivers in like the first half, which was shocking to me. Normally, Patrick Mahomes has his guys, and he just likes to stick with those guys. But there was like 6 or 7 different people he was going to. I think Pacheco was the leading receiver with only 4 receptions, which is nuts to me.
And Patrick Mahomes was the leading rusher for Kansas City. You saw Pacheco get a couple handoffs here and there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire started the game, but he didn't have too many great plays from the backfield. Mahomes was the leading rusher, which is 45 yards. The offense really took a hit, and the biggest part of that was Travis Kelce, who did not get the start dealing with an injury, which Chuck was actually, the team thought it was going to be a lot worse than it was. Talk a little bit about that injury and how he's expected to be back this week.
It's a good sign having Kelce back. I mean, he's what I call a safety blanket. He's that guy that anytime you need him, he's always open, or he's there for that 4 or 5 yards normally. Having him back for week 2 will be massive, and I think that they do beat the Jags next week.
A lot of credit to the Lions, though. How about coming into Arrowhead? Arrowhead's one of the hardest places to play in the NFL, and the Lions came in. Jared Goff is looking like a top 2 quarterback in the NFC North.
Yeah.
And, he used his weapons well. Jahmyr Gibbs coming in. He didn't get as many touches as I thought he would. He was split with David Montgomery, but Jahmyr Gibbs, I think he's on the up, especially for fantasy. And, of course, I'm on Ross St. Brown.
Of course.
Yeah.
That guy?
Yeah,
he's my guy.
Yeah.
I'm on Ross St. Brown.
I think that the Lions' offense was it was perfect almost. They had the little 2-headed snakes of Montgomery and Gibbs. And then Reynolds, also 20 yards per catch, having 80 yards on the game. That shocked me. It felt like anytime they needed a big 3rd down play, he was always open. And I feel like that was just the Chiefs forgetting about him out there, focusing too hard on St. Brown. I think that really helped the Lions get a lead in this.
In my opinion, what the best game was over the weekend, the Miami Dolphins and the Los Angeles Chargers. Take a look at the highlights right now. This one went down to the wire. The Dolphins, guys, started out amazing last year. I think they were 4-0 out of the gates, took down the division rival Buffalo Bills, and then Tua Tagovailoa goes down with an awful injury midway through that season, and it was derailed from there. But getting the season started off, they still have their receiving core in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and it just seems like they've gotten more guys. A couple other guys. River Craycraft caught a touchdown yesterday. They still have their tight ends. They still have their running backs, even dealing with some injuries. That offense is just impeccable.
I think it's safe to almost say this might be one of the best offenses in the league. I mean, that speed is disgusting. And as a Jets fan, they got me shaking in my boots a little bit because they're so good. It feels like Tua can go anywhere, and even if he doesn't have one of his receivers open, he has Raheem Mostert. It feels like they have just unlimited weapons, similar to what we saw with the 49ers last year.
Tyreek Hill had 11 catches, 215 yards. There's one of them right there. He also had 2 touchdowns, and I have him on my fantasy team. 45 points was excellent yesterday with him. But the Chargers, however, they made it a game. They're leading right here, and this was an outstanding catch by Tyreek Hill. The Chargers, though, another one of the best teams in the AFC. This was a battle in week 1. Austin Eckler just comes out doing Austin Eckler things. He had 117 yards on the ground. He also had 47 yards through the air and a touchdown. He has just been outstanding as well for fantasy owners.
And you look at this Miami defense. You talked about all the weapons they had on offense. To close the game out on the defensive side, putting pressure on Justin Herbert like that spells success in the National Football League. There's not many quarterbacks. If Tua's not getting away from that, or not Tua, but Justin Herbert, then there's not a lot of guys that are.
And being able to make that pressure in those big spots against in my opinion, one of my favorite O-lines in the Chargers, I think that shows some brightness for this team, especially without even having Jalen Ramsey yet.
Chuck, thank you so much for your insight this evening. We'll see you in coming weeks.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, we're going to go over the rest of the NFL games from yesterday just real quickly. So let's start with the 1 o'clock games. Carolina was in Atlanta, and the Falcons took down the Panthers 24-10. That was an excellent game as well. But the Falcons, they had Bijan Robinson and an excellent game, Caden.
Drake London was nowhere to be found.
No.
In Atlanta, but I think there's a lot to like in both of these teams. Maybe in a couple of years, not right now. They have young guys at the helm, Bryce Young for the Panthers. I'm not convinced.
Yeah. And then secondly, the Cincinnati Bengals were in Cleveland to take on the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson's comeback game. He had an excellent game yesterday. That's going to be a top 10 matchup. The Buckeyes ranked third overall right now in the nation. The Fighting Irish are looking good, but do you think that they have a chance to take down the Buckeyes?
Well, I think if you want to submit yourself in the picture for the college playoff football picture, you get what I'm putting down.
You need a win like that if you want to be back into the college football playoff. You need a good win that the committee can look at and say,
and that's
this team deserves to be in the playoff. Let's move on to the Purdue Boilermakers. They had a great game on Saturday as well. They bounced back from their opening week loss. They took on the Virginia Tech Hokies. They took them down 24-17. Hudson Card had 248 yards through the air for the Boilermakers, and they held off Virginia Tech's Grant Wells, who also threw for 243 yards, but also had 2 interceptions on Saturday that kind of dethroned Virginia Tech. And then lastly, IU, they played on Friday night, and they played the Indiana State Sycamores, and that was a great game. Not really close. The Hoosiers won 41-7, and a defensive touchdown was the only touchdown that the Sycamores scored in the entire game. Taven Jackson threw for 236, also had a rushing touchdown on the ground, and the Hoosiers move on and bounce back with a Week 2 win. We now welcome our IndyCar expert, Landon Coons, over here to talk about the Laguna Seca finishing up IndyCar. Landon?
Yes, thanks, Graham. It was really fun to see the 2023 IndyCar Series finally get done with. Alex Palou took home his second championship. Even before the last race even concluded, he wrapped it up at the second to last race of Portland, getting his second title in the last 3 years. And, you know, Scott Dixon, the Iceman, there's nothing that you can say that, I mean, he's undeniably one of the best IndyCar drivers ever out there. And even watch this on the first stream. You see this blue and orange car here in the middle here. He's going to get involved in a crash. Well, they said he caused a crash, served a drive-through penalty, and even before the race, he had to take a 6th-place grid penalty for an engine change even before the races started. And that race, if you could define one word about that race, it was carnage. And somehow Scott Dixon finds the way to get up through the field, and he manages to win his 3rd win of the season. He won the last 3 or 4 races. It was his first win at Laguna Seca and 56th career win.
What's next for IndyCar? I know you have a break here, but what's next?
So for next season, the season is going to open up at St. Petersburg like usual, and then it was announced yesterday that IndyCar will race an all-star race out at the Thermal Club out in Southern California.
That'll be fun to watch.
Will be.
Well, thank you, Landon. Thanks for your insight into IndyCar. And we're going to go ahead and take a short break, but coming up, we look into our Monday Night Football forecast. It's last call. Stick around.
We'll leave it to our actual athletes. Watch UINDY TV's live sports broadcast on GLVCSN and YouTube.
The first time I went to Lucas Oil was last year for the 6A Center Grove versus Carroll State High School football game. And I walk in this time thinking I know what's going on, thinking I know what's going to happen. And if I were to say that Lucas Oil lost any effect on you, just the pure vastness that it hits you when you walk in, I'd be wrong. And Jace put it perfectly. He walked in and said, wow, this is the dream. And it is, because the people that we look up to listen to a high school football game of the week on WICR HD3 UINDY Radio.
Back at last call here, UINDY TV, Caden Colford, Graham Scher, a brand new segment right here on last call. It's called Monday Football Forecast. We're going to go through the entire next week of NFL games, make our predictions, make our picks, and also we're each going to give 3 locks and then keep track of those locks and our record with those throughout the remainder of the semester of shows, Caden. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first game of this upcoming week, week 2, is the Minnesota Vikings in Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Thursday night football. Caden, who you got?
Give me Philadelphia. Philadelphia, they have too many weapons on both sides of the ball. Minnesota coming off of a lackluster performance against Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. I think the Eagles take it pretty easily.
Sound like you want to make that a lock, no?
I wouldn't say it's as confident as some of my others,
okay. I think I'm going to take the Eagles as well. They just look too good for everybody right now. All right, let's move on. Sunday, Atlanta Falcons hosting the Green Bay Packers. Caden?
I'm all go Pack go. Jordan Love looks good. His first week as a Packer. I'm very excited for this guy. He looks, like I said it earlier in the show, he almost looks like his predecessor in Aaron Rodgers. The arm talent has gotten better and better, and I think after a couple of years on the bench, he's ready to go.
Jordan Love in Atlanta to take on the Falcons. Mark it down as my first lock. The Packers take it in Atlanta.
I got
the Packers. My first lock. Green Bay takes down Atlanta. All right, let's move on. Up in New York, Buffalo hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. I got the Bills. Who you got?
I think Bills, just almost the same story as the Eagles. That offense led by Josh Allen, it's too high powered for almost any defense in the league. So Raiders with their hands full. I don't know if it's a lock, but give me the Bills.
And then let's move on. Cincinnati hosting the Baltimore Ravens. That's an AFC divisional rivalry there as well. Do the Bengals bounce back, Caden?
I think they do. Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow both coming off subpar performances to their standards. I think Joe Burrow rises above here, and I think he shows why he's a top 3 quarterback in the league.
Both of these teams had poor efforts, you might say, in their opening week. So I do not feel comfortable making a lock on this game, but I will say the Bengals bounce back. Joe Burrow has a bounce back game. Jamar Chase has a big one, and they take down the Ravens. Seattle in Detroit to take on the Lions. Caden?
I like Detroit. I mean, week 1 at Kansas City, they showed a lot of promise on both sides of the ball. I think Jahmyr Gibbs, I think he starts to get into the mix a little bit more. Yep. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown just going to do what he does best. And, I mean, if Jared Goff can orchestrate the offense like he did week 1, I think they take week 2 pretty easily.
This is going to be my second lock of the week. Detroit, mark it down. They take down the Seahawks in Detroit. They bounce back, and after taking down the Chiefs on opening night, they start the year 2-0. Second lock, Detroit takes down the Seahawks. Los Angeles Chargers in Tennessee to take on the Titans.
In Tennessee, I think Tennessee bounces back. I think Derrick Henry really starts to bump it up.
Wow.
Derrick Henry, I traded him away this year in fantasy, but I still think he has something left in the tank, and I think they pull it out at home.
Difference of opinion here. I got the Chargers taking down the Titans in Tennessee. Tampa Bay taking on the Chicago Bears. This is a tough one as well. Caden, who you got?
Give me Baker Mayfield. I'm on the Baker train. I think he was on a tear week 1. Here comes Baker week 2. That's what I want.
Mayfield. Yeah, I'm not sure who I got in this one. I think I'm going to go with Chicago. I think Justin Fields has a bounce back game, and I think the Bears get it done. Kansas City in Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. Do you think Patrick Mahomes has a bounce back week, Caden?
Yeah, I do, because he's the best player in the league, and I don't think it's a huge debate either.
Yeah.
I think almost every NFL coach and every NFL GM would say the exact same thing, and I think he's going to show why he's the undisputed number 1 in the league.
I also think the Chiefs will bounce back. The Colts are in Houston to take on the Texans. Caden?
I think this is a lot tougher than people might think. I want to go with Indianapolis. I will, because Anthony Richardson, after week 1, he's seen everything that he needs to see. He's going to make better decisions next week. Give me AR5 in the Indianapolis Colts.
You know, I think I'm going to take the Colts as well. I think they get it done over Houston, and I think Anthony Richardson pulls off his first NFL big-time win. All right, San Francisco in Los Angeles to take on the Rams. I got San Francisco in this one.
I think pretty easily as well. Christian McCaffrey showed out week 1. Brock Purdy. Talk about this guy as QB1. I mean, he sent Trey Lance to Dallas because this guy, he really showed out in camp. He showed out week 1. I think he does the same thing week 2.
The Giants in Arizona to take on the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals take down the Giants.
You know what? After their week 1 showing, I don't blame you, but I don't think that that New York team's as bad as week 1 might have shown. I think with Saquon in the backfield, I think Danny Dimes can get it together, get his arm in check, get his legs moving again. I think the Giants take it.
All right, and then New York in Dallas to take on the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys stay hot.
I don't. Give me New York. I like their
Jets.
young squad built around Aaron Rodgers. Give me the Jets. Some sneaky team this year.
I got the Broncos over the Commanders on Sunday.
Broncos and Commanders. I think Denver. Denver at home.
And then let's move to the Monday night game, our Monday night game. I got the Panthers over the Saints.
Panthers over the Saints. I think the Saints got it.
Yeah.
Honestly, under new management with Derek Carr, I think he gets them together.
The Dolphins, my final lock against the Patriots. Join us next week on Last Call.